It was a quiet night, a night that would change thousands of lives. April 26th, 1986, 1:23:04 a.m. A disaster occurred that would reshape all of Europe. Reactor number 4 no longer existed. Not in the way anyone believed. Radiation was already escaping into the atmosphere. But no one knew, except the workers inside the control room of Reactor 4. To understand what happened that night, we must first understand how it all began. Before we can understand what happened that night, we need to understand how the RBMK reactor worked. The RBMK was simple in principle. Control rods were lifted, reactivity increased, the core heated up, and water flowed through it, turning into steam. That steam drove the turbines, and after passing through the separators, it condensed back into water and returned to the system. Now that we know the basics, we can look at what went wrong. It all began with an innocent-looking safety test. The goal was to find out whether the turbines could keep generating electricity for a few seconds during a blackout, just long enough for the backup diesel generators to start. But there was a catch. If the turbines stopped producing power, the pumps would stop pushing water into the reactor. And that is exactly what happened. But the real danger started long before the test. The reactor was not prepared correctly. It was supposed to run at 700 to 1,000 megawatts of thermal power. Instead, it was at only 200. Why is that a problem? A reactor running far below its operating level behaves like an engine running at extremely low RPM. It begins to choke. It produces gases that poison the core, reducing reactivity even further. Unlike an engine, the reactor cannot simply shut itself off. It just becomes unstable. The shift supervisor insisted the test must continue, even though the reactor had been poisoned for nearly 10 hours. When a reactor is shut down, certain isotopes form that prevent it from being restarted for at least 24 hours. But the supervisor ignored the rules. He ordered the operators to bring the reactor back up, barely, to 200 megawatts. At that moment, more than 190 control rods were fully withdrawn. The RBMK had around 220 rods in total. This meant the reactor was on the edge of a massive power surge, held back only by the poisoning gases inside the core. In the reactor hall, one worker saw the massive steam pipes, each weighing 6 tons, lifting and shaking violently. He ran to warn the control room, but it was already too late. The operators pressed AZ5, the emergency shutdown button. But instead of saving the reactor, it triggered the final catastrophe. As the control rods began to insert, their graphite tips caused a sudden spike in reactivity. A runaway neutron surge began, unstoppable. And then it happened. A massive explosion. The 50-ton reactor lid was thrown 10 meters into the air before crashing back into the core. Seconds later, a second explosion, 5 times stronger, tore the building apart. Superheated graphite, uranium, and boron reacted violently with oxygen. Burning graphite was launched hundreds of meters into the night. Reactor number 4 was gone.